All right, we are live.
Where did you say
Hello, Ines.
Hi, Inez. Hi, Inez. I miss you.
Yeah, Ines watched the last one, guys.
Did she comment like before?
No, she did not comment. Yeah.
She didn't watch it all the way.
I know. Okay, guys. Yeah, so we're going through, and what are we going through, guys? James, right? All right, cool. And does anyone know what part we are in James?
Chapter 4.
Huh?
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4.
Second half, 11 through 17.
Wow, good job, Isaac.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I just saw Minecraft on your cup. What'd you say? What? Oh, close. Oh, okay. Cool. So before we get into the verses that we're going to get into, we didn't really make a post for it today, did we? But the discussion for today is let God be God. Oh, there you go. So what have we learned from James so far, everybody? Let's give a quick little overview. James 1. Who remembers? What's the point of the letter?
Might be perfect as trials.
Yeah. Right. It's like the first couple verses, right? He's like, I'm writing so that you can endure temptations, and when you do that, your faith can be made complete, right? You can become a mature Christian, right. Who's he writing to? Huh? To the 12 tribes of Israel. Good. I thought it was Egypt. No, I'm just kidding. Right? 12 tribes of Israel, right? And it says he's writing to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. What does that mean? They're not in Israel, right? Yeah. So they're exiles, right? So, or it could mean that he is writing to them, to the Jews that are not in Jerusalem, right? Because what was James?
He was the head of the church in Jerusalem.
He was the head of the church in Jerusalem. Yeah. And he stopped being the head of the church. Why? Because he got martyred. Right. Exactly. How did he get martyred? Anyone remember? Stones. What happened before that?
Throwing.
What do you mean?
Off a cliff.
Right. They threw him off the top of the Temple Mount, right? And then they stoned him. Right. So this is a really early New Testament letter, right, guys?
The first one, right?
Some could say even the earliest, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Within like 3-4 years of Jesus resurrecting, right? All right, so we learned that. What else? What are some other things we learned? We can just like quickly skim through. What are some things we've learned as we've gone through James 1 through 4?
Hearing and doing.
What do you mean?
The word.
So what do you mean?
Being a doer of the word.
Right. Don't just hear what you're supposed to do. You should do what you're supposed to do, right? Right? Because someone who hears and doesn't do, what kind of person is that? They're a hypocrite, right? Don't be a hypocrite Christian. Also, but what else? And double-minded. Well,
No.
that's a different part, right? What about they're like a person? Yeah, they're like a person who looks in the mirror and forgets who he is, right? They're not acting like who they're supposed to be, right? But someone who does the word, and it's talking about believers, right? Because he's talking about believers, right? Someone who does the word, they look in the mirror, they see who they are, and then they do what they're supposed to do, right? They don't forget, right? All right, so that's good for the first chapter, kind of. Yeah, that's good, right? And what about when he talks about pure and undefiled religion is before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows, right? And that if you think you're religious, but you can't even control your tongue, what does that mean about your religion? It's worthless. Why?
Because you're not like doing what you say that you do.
Sometimes I start a sentence.
Right?
Why is it bad if you think you're super religious, you do all these super religious things, help out at the food pantry, help out at the clothing bank, and do those kinds of things. But maybe you come back into your home or a cafe and you can't even control your tongue. What does that mean? No, I'm just kidding. What is it? But why? What's the point he's trying to make?
Being a bad example.
You're being a bad example, right? Why would he say your religion's useless? Like he doesn't even just say like bad. He's like, oh, it's like actually useless. Like it's not even there's not even use.
Because if you're saying that you're doing one thing and then you do this other thing, like an unbeliever would be like, well, then it doesn't really add much to that.
Uh-huh.
Like, you're just like everyone else. Not according to
Okay, that's a good way to think about it, like evangelistically, right? And like witness wise.
Is it kind of like the thing Andre said with the tree? Like you have fruit, then you have just fruit, but you're not like doing anything with it. Is that
Maybe.
kind of the same thing, or no?
Yeah. Well, what's like the whole point of God's like commands? Like what's the whole law summed up, right? What is it? Love God, love others. So let's say you're doing all these things, but you get home and you mistreat your family by the way that you verbally abuse them. What does that mean for you fulfilling those commandments? You're not doing it. Yeah, exactly, right? It's useless, right? The religion that you're doing, that you're trying to gain something or you're trying to prove something, you're trying to do something, it's actually useless because you're actually doing the opposite, right? And then he got into James 2. What about James 2?
Don't be partial.
Yeah, don't be partial, because being partial is being a hypocrite. Yeah, right. James, a lot in this letter, James is like, don't be a hypocrite, right? Because a lot of people, I mean, me included, right? But like everybody, that's something people have a propensity towards, right? Let me give the rich person, or let me give the cool person, or let me give that person all the attention, and not the person that looks weird or is poor or whatever. So don't be partial. Why? Or what else? Is being partial a big deal? Or is it kind of like, it's like a minor key sin? You know, like if you're looking at all the sins, it's like, oh, being partial, it's like, Huh? All sin's a big deal. That's true. But also, right? We look at like verses 8 through 13, and he actually brings partiality, and he brings it up with adultery and murder, right? It's like a big deal, right? Does anyone remember verses 12 and 13? So speak and so do as those who will be judged by the law of liberty, for judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Does anyone remember what we talked about for that?
That's the second judgment.
What do you mean?
Like there's the judgment for like salvation,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the judgment of like your importance and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you would say.
Yeah. And you're saying that's what this is talking about? Right, like how believers, so like people that believe in Jesus, right, they're going to be judged by the law of liberty, right? And so only those people are under it. And then depending on how that goes, that's your judgment at the judgment seat of Christ, right? When Jesus rewards believers, yeah, right, for how they lived and what it'll be like when he returns to earth, right? Mm-hmm. And so to get a good judgment there, what about it? Verse 13.
If we don't show mercy to others, then mercy won't be shown to us in that judgment.
Right.
But mercy triumphs over judgment.
But
So we'll still be saved, but we'll be judged
Mm-hmm.
based on how we lived our Christian life.
Right. So like you want Jesus to show you mercy, right? You'll show mercy to others, right? So does that mean that if I don't show mercy, then I lose my salvation? What do you think about that?
Because mercy transferred it.
Okay, but I didn't show mercy.
Yeah, but God showed you mercy.
Okay, so if I here, let me see. Okay, so yeah, so if I don't show mercy to someone, I can still have eternal life.
If you believe, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to say to that? We kind of went over it briefly, but all right, second half of James 2, and then we can go quick. Right, James 2, that's kind of like the pinnacle, right? That's the part that everyone zeroes in on, right? What we learned from the second half of James 2?
Faith and words are together.
Yeah, right. So why does it matter? Why does it matter if faith has works? What's the point? Doesn't matter. What do you guys think?
Well, it's like a lot of profitable
Mm-hmm.
and points people to Jesus. And I would say it does matter. I don't think it affects your salvation, but it matters when it comes to like showing others the effect that God can have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And if you're not, if nothing's coming out of your faith, then it's not really, it can't help anyone, right? It's kind of the point. Mm-hmm.
What would you say again to like, I've heard that this verse proves that you do need works for salvation? Like,
Yeah. What do you think?
yeah.
I know, and I'm asking. Okay, what does everyone think?
I would say that it doesn't mention salvation. It just says faith without works instead. So that's the verse we're talking about, right?
Well, just that section, right?
Yeah, so yeah, it's not mentioning that, it's just showing that it's dead. It doesn't say faith without works is not faith, therefore you're not saved.
Anybody else? Oh, sorry.
I can't find it, but I know it's in John, and so I'm hoping you know what I'm talking about. But what about the verse where it says, "A man must be born again of spirit and of water"?
Mm-hmm. John 3:5, yeah.
John 35.
3:5.
Oh, what do you think about that?
We talked. This was a question that you had before.
Oh, are you thinking like baptism as a word?
Yeah, because when it says that you have to be born again of the spirit and of water, which is the abundant part, not baptism.
Like physical birth, like out of the hand having sex with food.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's what.
Because he's already asking, like, how can I be born again? He's specifically talking about physical birth when you read the whole context of their conversation. And so, like, obviously, when you pull out that one verse, it's gonna sound like that.
Yeah. It's actually like Nicodemus, like that Jewish like tradition, like that's like the first birth is being born of water, right? And then there was like 5 other births after that. And so when Jesus is talking to Nicodemus is like the top guy in Israel. He's already done them all. And so Jesus says, you need to be born again. And Nicodemus is like bugging because he's like, I've done them all. That's what's going on there. And then he says, you need to do it again. And that's why, like she said, he's so confused that he literally is like, do I need to go back in my mom's womb?
I see.
Right.
Thank you.
But yeah, but think about it. Yeah, like how do you know when someone's when someone's in labor, their water breaks, right? So yeah, and also it's interesting that passage actually it doesn't even say the word baptism in it.
An imperfect analogy might kind of be like,
Oh, hey, Brennan.
works and believing in Jesus Christ and being saved are 2 separate things, but maybe think about chess. Believing in Jesus and saying, Jesus, I believe in you, could be kind of like, or is kind of like the knight or the king in chess, whereas the other pieces are kind of like works, where a lot of times, what's going to get you to heaven isn't the works you do, it's whether you have your faith in Jesus Christ, that you have a king on the board, but like the other pieces can, but they're still important. It's not like they're not.
No, I get what you're saying. Like,
Grow your faith and keep it strong.
yeah, like it's like if there's no king, it's game over.
Yeah.
So the king is needed, and then all those other pieces, they really help.
Yeah.
And they're
This
useful.
case point is the man on the cross next to Jesus who died, and he didn't really have a chance to live, like, turn his life around.
Hmm.
He was being killed as a murderer, or like crucified as a murderer. So Jesus said, ultimately, be with me in paradise.
Okay. Yeah. And so, yeah, right. And then James, that's good thoughts, guys. And then James gives the example of Abraham and Rahab, right? And they were really good studies of Abraham believed God, right? You get the gospel part. He believed God, and what happened? Accounted as righteous, right? So I believe. That doesn't mean I'm righteous, but I get what? I get credited righteous, right? And then when he went and followed God in faith by being willing to sacrifice Isaac, well, then what happened? Then he was called what? Friend of God, right? So Scripture was made complete when he believed, credited as righteousness. That's the salvation part, right? And then lived that out, and then actually gained a close relationship with God, and was even called his friend, right? And that's what James wants for us, right? And then James 3, so that kind of, right, the first two chapters he kind of lays it out, and then 3 and 4 he kind of talks about how to do that. So 3, what we talk about 3, what certain things about what we do and who we are, and certain part of the body, the tongue. What about it? Yeah, can you? Mm-hmm. Right. So you just got to do your best to try and control it, right? Because the tongue is like an evil poison, right? We talked about how one sentence, right? You can change your day, you can change someone else's day, right? With one sentence. Okay. And then we talked about wisdom a little bit, right? Talked about the difference between heavenly wisdom and earthly wisdom. What's the difference? Huh? Right. Earthly wisdom is not actually real wisdom, right? So if you only operated in this world, something that looks wise actually isn't, right? And it's actually really bad. It's bad for you. It's bad for others. All that type of thing, right? And then what about heavenly wisdom?
In 17, it says it's pure.
Right? And it's first pure, right? That's the first thing it is, right? And then it's peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, right? It's without partiality and without hypocrisy, right? That's a big theme that we've been going through these weeks. And then we move on to what we went over last week. And then what is it? What we talked about last week, people that were here. Talked about pride, and we talked about grace.
And also like being different to the world.
Mm-hmm. So be a friend of the world and what?
Well, being a friend to the world results in being an enemy to God.
Right. And there's no middle ground there, right? You can't be a friend of the world and neutral with God, right? If you're a friend of the world, you're automatically an enemy of God, right?
What do you mean, friend?
Yeah, what do we mean?
Like if you say hi to someone on the street,
Yeah.
you're a friend of the world.
Does that apply?
Choosing carnal desires over God's will.
Okay.
Well, I think even more simply than that, it's tolerating sinfulness
Okay.
and
Or
not.
even enjoying it.
Or enjoying it. Those are good. I think those are
What do
good.
you mean tolerating sinfulness?
So if you hang out with people that are being sinful all the time, be it getting drunk all the time, drinking drugs all the time, and you just kind of hang out with them and don't like say anything about it, you're just tolerating them
Or like you're not against it, like
Oh, yeah,
you're tolerating.
you don't speak out against it. You don't say anything.
But
Like,
they
you
should know
be
that it's
against.
obvious that
You should.
that's not something that you.
What if you're around sin so much that like it doesn't seem like sin anymore?
Well, what do you mean? That, I mean, I think that's a,
It's like,
I think that's a different
but then
question.
like, is that tolerating it if it just doesn't seem like sin?
What do you? Does that?
They're just being callous.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
like you
I don't.
tolerate the thing.
What do you, yeah. What do you think of that?
Too much, you're callous.
Yeah. Do y'all get the point that he's making when he says callous, right? Like think about when you go to the gym, right? And you get those little thingies, right? What happens to your skin right here? It gets really hard, right? Calloused, right? It doesn't feel the rip from the bar or anything anymore, right? It's the same way. So you sin so much or you're in it so much, you become callous to it. It's like you're numb to it, right?
It's also being around people who are like that, should we not minister to them and still be a friend to them?
What do y'all think?
But I think you can still do that without, well, obviously you would be participating, but I think you can still do that without like acting like you don't care.
Yeah. You wouldn't say not it's not about being around them.
Yeah,
You
because
wouldn't be like,
Jesus
oh.
is a great example of that. He was around these awful people all the time, right? He was having meals with
Prostitutes
people,
and
or prostitutes and whatever, right? And yet Jesus never sinned, and Jesus does not tolerate sin. So there's a big difference between being surrounded by people that are sinners, because people are sinners too, but right, and just being friends with sin.
yeah, does that kind of make sense? Cool. All right, well then
I've always, this is maybe unrelated, like what, I totally agree with what Abraham said. Did Jesus do things just because they were pleasurable? Like there's this idea of, just doing things just because they're pleasurable. A lot of times I view Jesus as he's stoic is the word.
Mhm.
Like what?
Yeah.
Just because something's like, yeah. Do you think Jesus regularly did things just because they're pleasurable? Or do you think he was too focused on other things?
what do you guys think?
I mean, like, what does that mean?
A
Like,
train?
It's not like
going on a walk and enjoying like a nice peaceful walk is something that's pleasurable. Should we not treat it as not being us?
Well, yeah. What do you?
I think that people like what's pleasurable to God is anything that's good. It's whatever is good, he finds pleasure in. So he was constantly doing things. You know, like whether that was talking with the disciples, he found that pleasurable because it was good. Good discipleship. Like when you say pleasurable, can you like did he eat Doritos? Like did he find
Yeah, burritos make me feel good.
It sounds like he had fun at the wedding at Cana.
Oh, like dancing? What's wrong with you?
no.
Huh? Some people have problems with dancing.
I would say that I wouldn't use the word pleasurable as is. Yeah, of whatever it was, it was pleasurable.
Just a synonym.
They were good, they were loving, and doing those things, doing things that are good and that are loving, are pleasing to the Father.
Yeah, so I think Jesus went on a walk. Yeah.
How often?
How often? Twice a week? Do I need to do that?
I just think I should be doing that.
All right. Well, let's get into the verses, guys. Yeah. Let's be quick about it. That was a good discussion. Okay. All right. So like I said, this will be a little bit quicker, and we just spent a lot of time, so we're gonna just like slide through this, and then maybe we can talk after. But let's just make sure we touch on our verses. So we have the next 2 weeks, and then we'll finish. And then what happens during finals week? No. No.
Party.
Party. Say it. You said it.
Bonfire.
Yeah, bonfire at
let's go.
Shane and Kim's, which we'll give you all the address for that as we get closer to it. But we'll all hang out. Maybe we'll sing some worship songs. Marshmallows. Maybe roast some like hot dogs, do like an end of the year, just a time for y'all to chill. No. And then next week, the interns want to do something special,
Yeah.
a certain celebration.
Oh, Passover feast. Yeah.
You guys want to do Passover?
Passover.
Oh, that's next week, yeah.
You guys want to explain that a little bit?
I don't know anything about
All right, so the interns thought it would be cool to do
All you guys.
yeah, a Passover. And so what we'll do is we'll kind of talk about Passover. We'll do like a small little one that will be very jagged as we're doing, everything just the way so that we can, do it. But anyways,
Like a mini pass.
it'll be like a mini Passover. So we'll have some food for you guys, and then we'll talk about the significance of Passover. Yeah, and if anyone's worried, don't worry. It's not a sin to celebrate Jewish festivals.
What's Passover?
It's a Jewish festival that the Israelites celebrate every year. And it's when Jesus had the Last Supper.
But
Explain when
it's kind of after like the Exodus story.
Yeah.
With the Israelites leaving Egypt.
Right.
Can we explain? I think you were going to explain next week. We do it.
Yeah, no,
It's crazy.
yeah, right. Well, like when God passed over the Israelite children, when the blood was on their doorposts, well, Passover because he passed over them, right? But he judged Egypt, right? So in order to be passed over, you needed to have the blood on the doorpost, and it's a picture of Jesus, where you need to believe in Jesus and have His blood cover you, so that you're passed over with no judgment. Make sense? That's the picture. Yeah, lots of parallels. Cool.
Really interesting.
All right, guys, let's start. Verse 11 in James 4. Do not speak evil of one another, brethren. He who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother speaks evil of the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver who is able to save and to destroy. Who are you to judge another? What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think James is talking about there, right? So we're moving in away from pride, and now we're moving into speaking evil about one another. Should we do it? Do we do it?
Yeah.
Right. So that's maybe a check for us to think about, right? What do you think the point is he's trying to make in these verses? What do you think he means when he says that if you do speak evil of a brother, you speak evil of the law and you judge the law? Any guesses?
What Lord are we talking about here?
I think he's talking about the Mosaic law, but using that as an application, right? So
Yeah.
Mhm. Or it could be either one, because he's just saying whichever one he is referring to, he's talking about the fact that God's the one who gives it, right? There's one lawgiver. Why is that important? Maybe that can help us with the earlier verses. Why did he say there's one lawgiver?
Or judge.
Okay, because he's our judge. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us?
Not the judge.
We're not the judge, right? No, I mean, right? It's not. Yeah, it's not rhetorical, right? God's the judge. I'm not the judge. So if I'm judging and speaking evil, what does that make me? If I'm speaking evil of a brother and making judgments on him, what does that make me? A slanderer, okay? And it makes me what else? Which would make me the judge. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So that's what he's saying there, because then you're the one becoming the judge of the law, right? So when we speak evil on others, whether we wish evil on them, gossip or anything like that, right? we're not submitting to God's law, but rather we're putting ourselves over it. Does that mean
There's a lot of cases where like that's okay though. Like
to speak evil?
like are we talking about like speaking ill of someone?
Yeah, speaking. Yeah,
Okay.
speaking. No, not speaking. Speaking evil.
What do you mean by speaking evil?
Speaking evil. I mean, I don't.
Well, like, is that like speaking with the devil's tongue, or is that like I don't think?
So like let's say I had something against Isaac and I just didn't like him, and I go and I'm talking to Rinsley and I'm like, Isaac does this and he wears this and you know, like
I think
screw Isaac.
there's also a difference between like saying what somebody did.
Yeah.
And like name calling and like
Name calling,
like,
slandering,
making like presupposed judgments that
Yeah.
like, aren't necessarily
prejudice.
And then there's also something to be said about like saying it to an unnecessary amount of people.
Mhm.
So, like saying what somebody did is okay.
Depends on who you're talking to.
And it depends on how you're saying it and what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, that too.
That's true.
Right.
Like if I was reading some story about some girl who's in California, like
Hey, be careful.
no, like it was a while ago, like she was staying with her aunt and she just got back from something. I can't remember. True story. Her aunt knew there was like some serial killer around this park, and she thought like, oh, I don't want to scare her. She wanted to walk. Anyway, the serial killer ended up killing this lady, and the aunt was like, I thought about telling like my cousin or what would be her niece, but like I didn't want to scare her, and she ended up being killed. And so like that would be a really good example of the time to be like, there's a serial killer that's like been hanging around this park.
Yeah,
That would be a different topic. That's a different folder.
but true.
That's an extreme example.
Right.
So like, there's this guy that you know like did something bad when he was with his like previous girlfriend, and your friend wants to date him, and you're like, I don't think he should because
Yeah.
do this to that.
So
I would tell.
So yeah, do you think would that be speaking evil of someone?
How about like if you tell your friend about something that happened to you, this person was like really rude, and you like want to, you just have to keep it to yourself and suffer in silence? Or?
So well, it depends. Are you being a gossip? Are you slandering?
You're speaking.
No. I'm saying like it. No, I'm just saying in these scenarios, all these things have to be taken into account.
I don't know. Am I asking you?
No, I don't know what you did. No, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Like you're
You know, speaking, like expositioning history is not evil, right?
But also, like, if you were to go around saying that to a lot of people,
Just
probably would be.
with the purpose.
Yeah, like let's say
Because you're pissed at them and
let's say
you want
someone's-
everyone to know.
let's say someone's an alcoholic, and let's say someone's alcoholic, and everybody I met was like, hey, just to let you know, when you talk to them before you get into anything with them, they're an alcoholic, or they were an alcoholic.
And then-
Hey,
then
before you
you're
talk-
burning all the bridges
This
with
person's
yourself.
alcoholic. Hey, just want to let you know, this person, they're an alcoholic.
In this
Like,
scenario,
you get what I
in
mean?
this specific scenario, though, I
We're just
would
making
say-
judgments.
In that specific scenario, though, I will say,
Hmm?
it's always preferred to, instead of talking to just like a friend, it would be better to go to that person and try to make like right with that relationship, like being like, hey, what you did hurt, you know,
Yeah.
that would be the biblical response.
Well, like in a Matthew 18 case.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, right. So when someone speaks evil and judges, right, they're putting themselves above. Because what does God's law say? Does God's law say to speak evil? What does God's law say?
Love others.
Love others. But when I say, oh no, I'm going to do the opposite. That's me going above God's law, and I'm the one judging now. Does that make sense? So that's what he's saying. Okay. And they're not being a doer of the law. And do we want to be a doer of the law?
Yeah.
Yes, right. Chapter 1, right? And so remember that there's only one lawgiver, and you need to remember that because this guy also is the one that's able to save and destroy, right? And that's the same thing for us. Who are you to judge one another? Okay. Then we go into the last verses where he kind of talks about our lives. Okay. And he says, Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. What do you guys think? Let's kind of chop it up a little bit. Okay. What do we think about okay, let's take off the last verse. Don't think about that one. Let's talk about this scenario. What's James getting at here in this scenario? Making plans, and they're evil.
Well, no. I don't think you say that's an evil plan. It's like it was saying today or tomorrow we're gonna go spend a year there and make some money, it's like that, right? I think he's more saying like.
Well, not kind of like no. He said this is what's gonna happen. Today or tomorrow we'll go to such and such a city. We're gonna spend a year there. We're gonna buy and sell, and we're gonna make a profit. What you say not a good intent?
Like go somewhere like, oh, we're just gonna make all this money, like kind of island.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, no.
I think we could have a good plan for something, like good intentions to do something, but that might not be God's plan. So he's more saying like, okay, beware, like even if you have good intentions or bad intentions, God's will is still gonna come through in your life of what's gonna happen. So no matter what, like we kind of talk about this well, though, like with everything we say, we should be like, but this is if the Lord wills. Like, I'm gonna get married next year, if the Lord wills. I wanna have kids in 3 years, if the Lord wills. But that doesn't mean that's gonna happen.
Good to be humble, acknowledging the fact that we are not in control of our own lives to the extent that we think that we are. And recognizing that any second God could change our plans.
So what about the part where he says, "But now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil."
But like self-righteousness.
Hmm?
That sounds like self-righteousness.
So how does that apply? No. I'm saying like, is there like, how does that fit in with like, does that fit into like what he's saying?
I feel like boasting about how well things are going in your life and not giving the glory to God.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like,
Girls.
like, oh, look at me, I did this.
Don't cut her off.
No, I don't have anything else.
I think it also could be a kind of a self-reliance kind of thing. So
Uh-huh.
not just now we're judging other people in God's place, but now we're also solely relying on ourselves as our authority for our own life as well.
Like you're saying, like God, like I don't really care what God says about
Yes,
this.
like God can do whatever God wants to do. I'm gonna do my thing, because I think I know what's best. And he's saying,
Yeah.
like, your life is like that,
Whoosh.
gone.
Right.
You can do what God wants. Kind of in the same way of like, if you have faith but have no works, then there's no profit. In the same way, if you have your life but you're living for yourself instead of for God, then there's no profit.
Mm-hmm.
Although in the self-righteousness thing, like even if you're doing the don't necessarily have an evil plan, it's still not exactly like the right thing. Like even if he's just like going into town and making money, which isn't necessarily bad, that's not like a bad intent, but it's not what like God wants. So I think also like unless you're being absolutely perfect, don't be like, oh look at me, I'm so good, because you're not.
Right.
I think he finishes out in 17 really nicely. So what the one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin. So just because what you're doing isn't evil to us, we're like this and he went and made money. The fact that he did what he wanted to do instead of what God wanted to do, made for him instead.
This is a really practical thing, and I think his verse is probably talking a lot about the heart condition, not just like I've heard people say if the Lord wills, but when was the last time someone actually heard someone say something with the conditional if the Lord wills? But
People say like God willing, like I'm gonna go do this.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of times when people do mean it like deeply, that's not something they share though. Like I've done that in personal prayers, but it's not something I share.
I mean, yeah.
Because I think it happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all. I think all those are get at the attitude of the passage, right? What I kind of, I'm just looking at my notes. What I kind of had here was when we take the attitude of the person in the example, we see a clear order of priority. Okay, so if you had to guess, you guys, would you say that this person's number one goal is to grow closer to God and make Him known? Why not?
Because he says we're gonna go into such and such city,
Right.
do business, make a profit.
No, yeah, right.
It never says God.
Yeah, right. His number one outlook is himself, right? Okay.
it sounds like someone not a stereotype, but like going to New York City, becoming a finance bro.
American dream.
Yeah, or like going abroad.
Well, that's set track, right? I'm gonna do this, and I don't care. I don't care what I got to do, and I don't care what what needs to happen or whatever, right? And a lot of times, people, especially in business, right? A lot of people actually steamroll other people, right? I'm gonna make this profit, and I don't care if I have to jip the guy next to me, right? Yeah, right. Step on who you need to, right? What? Yeah. Well, I mean, some people just like to be, like,
Oh yeah. it's
I'm the
like,
only
me
one.
first.
I'm the only one that can
I would
paint
put
this.
me first.
Yeah. Totally.
Like,
That's okay.
it's just that like we all need money to live. And like unless your job is something to do with the church, you can't talk about like the church at work. I think you shouldn't because it's things that you don't want to like put your religion on people.
I think it depends on what your job is. Because they're
Yeah.
being a teacher, that's kind of harder. But
You shouldn't. You shouldn't.
Well, are you saying in the sense of like, are you saying like with this, like this guy?
Like we all need money to we all need to work, but unless you work like in the church, like something to do with Jesus, you can't really serve God while you work.
Well, what do you guys think?
That's what
Glorify God is everything you do.
I mean, also,
Like painting towers?
sorry, he said it's in
Yeah.
15, he
No,
said-
not every-
Right, Jesus.
Wait, sorry. All right, go, Isaac.
In 15, he says instead you have to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. I mean, part of living, like you're saying, is needing money. So if the Lord wills, I'm gonna go here, live, make money, and do this or that. So it's obviously God knows what we need. God's not gonna leave us out. We provide things, and oftentimes the way He provides through a job that He's given us or whatever that is. So again, the point is the money is not the problem. The problem is the focus on self.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, I really hope I make enough money so my family can eat. Like, that's not really the attitude that is being addressed here, Or like, I just need to make money to live.
it's more so like a selfish ambition of like, I'm building my empire.
Yeah.
Like it's all for me.
It's for me. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, right? Like, this is all for me.
And I'm gonna make
and
myself
not
feel
for
living
God.
Good, have a comfortable life.
Right.
But also, I wanted to say though, I think that as Christians, there are ways that we can bring God into our jobs, whatever that looks like. And I think it's totally awesome to do that. Like, and in every job it looks different because in some jobs, yeah, you're not allowed to talk about it. But that way, like, you can like live a life of like really glorifying God by being super honorable and like super, just doing everything unto the glory of God, which would look like doing things with excellence. But like a coworker might be like, hey, like, I'm really struggling. I feel really hopeless. And like, oh, well, I have hope. Let me share it with you.
And I'll also say, even just that idea too, where it's like, oh, well, it's not allowed in this, in these settings and that setting. So they're just regulating like belief at that point. Which, yes, I know it's a rule, right? But it's not like it's like, hey, you walk in the workplace and boom, there's no more beliefs. No, there is a belief, and it's in the code and the contract of wherever you're working. And so their belief is, usually it's humanism, right? And it's just, oh, we're just all helping each other, and that's good. So there is every single workplace has a religion. It's just a matter of, what is it, and how am I going to speak truth in whatever it is. There's not a single place, society, or whatever that's regulated or anything like that that doesn't have a belief system, because everything's regulated.
That's a really interesting thought.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, when people are like, oh, well, like the Constitution doesn't get into or just saying like morality and like objectivity and stuff. Like, no, like laws regulate all of it. Like it's just matter. The only question is, where is it coming from, right? For the Constitution, it comes more from the Bible. It could have came from the Quran. It could have come from Karl Marx, like something like that, right? Or you name it, right? What are you gonna say?
Oh, I just to give an example. Even in teaching, like at least in my state, my mom's a teacher, so she can't share her faith with people. But if her students ask her questions, she's perfectly allowed to answer. So the way that she lives, then students like, why do you live like that? Why do you do this thing? So she's allowed to answer. Share her faith. So,
Well, indoctrination indoctrination isn't just like teaching, and it's not just like, it's not explaining. Indoctrination has levels.
Sharing.
Or sharing.
It's just like.
Indoctrination. Sorry. Yeah, indoctrination has levels of, there's pressure, there's influence, there's like when you put the pressure on like when you start adding the negatives, right? Where, okay, if you don't do this, then you're gonna end up like this, and like you start from a very young age. No other considerations, no other, like, that's indoctrination.
Little kids and their teacher, which is usually their role model, is not pressure.
Well, I mean, but then you could say the same thing about parents.
Yeah, but parents have a right to help their change their
They also have the right to keep them from a teacher.
If a little kid asks you, like, in a school, like, do you believe in Jesus? And then they even ask you why, like, you can answer that, but you don't have to follow it. I really think you should also be going to church, and you should make sure you read the Bible, and you should.
Yeah. And if you don't too,
You legally can answer truthfully.
Yeah. And like, at least with indoctrination, there's the pressure aspect. Okay. And that's the part that is considered, not just teaching and explaining, if that makes sense.
A really powerful thing I've seen in people is even more than like trying to answer every question in a way that leads back to, and that's really good too, in a way that leads back to Christ. It's just being someone who people know what you stand for. A good example of this is I've known teachers where they're really strong prayer warriors, who people just know. Like, sometimes you don't even have to like do things that publicly. People just know. And like the principal would come to that teacher for prayer, like a really difficult, maybe just a like personal life thing or something, where it's not like, indoctrination, but if you're someone who people know what you stand for, students can, like, maybe high school students can come to this teacher, like, I need prayer for this or something. If people know what you stand for, it'll open up maybe fewer opportunities than like somehow trying to always indoctrinate someone, but it will open up really powerful opportunities.
To share our beliefs is kind of like a American right, like freedom of speech. Like,
Sure.
you can literally just say.
But I'll just say, so the different, like, so indoctrination, and here, there's, you can have multiple definitions, but here's a quick one, right? Process of teaching a person or a group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. Okay, so it's that last word that changes everything. Okay, and another thing is, process of inculcating a person or people into an ideology, often avoiding critical analysis. Right. So that's part. Right. That's part. It can refer to a general process of socialization. The term often implies forms of brainwashing, stuff like that. Does that make sense? So, basically, it's once again a big aspect of the pressure, a big aspect of the don't step outside right? Here's the fence, right? And if you step outside of it, something really bad is going to happen to you. Don't go beyond this fence. And you're doing that like in a, usually it's religious, right? Usually it's religious or worldview-esque, or could it be political?
And if someone.
It could be political. It could be political. Does that make sense? So, okay. So, but that's also not like it's also not like so like, let's say like Christianity, right? You could have a Christian home where they just teach their kid what they believe, and the kid's like, okay, I believe that too, right? But then you have another family that like does the indoctrination part and is like, don't step out the lines and don't talk to the people that aren't a part of us and all this stuff, right? So Christianity, the religion, right, could still be true, and one family didn't indoctrinate their kid and one family did. So it's like like, right? It's not just like, oh, Christian, it means indoctrination. You know what I mean? Now, if there's like a specific group that would like, that's like, okay, this is how you do it all the time and it is indoctrination, then like, yeah, that's indoctrination. But like, that's not really the case with like any I can't think of one group that like 100% would do this like that. Maybe I'm trying to think like a really small, like maybe like, yeah, I'll come back to you.
Okay,
Maybe one of those like Korean cults.
Some other stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Like the Mother of God people. Yeah.
We can learn about that later.
It's just the very, very interesting, just a very interesting group and beliefs. Okay. So and I kind of summed it up, right? Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. And that kind of gets into there's two kinds of sins, right? Commission and omission, okay? Sins that are of commission are sins that we commit that we shouldn't do. So don't commit adultery. I committed adultery. Commission, okay? Sins of omission is not fulfilling the things that you're supposed to do, okay? So it's like, friend, like let's say something happens right before your eyes, your friend is hurting. You could either choose to comfort your friend or insult your friend for crying, right? You should comfort, but you don't. That's like an omission. Make sense?
Well, on the way here, I saw 2 Mormon missionaries. And I thought I should probably talk to them, but I just didn't want to take that labor on me. And I kind of omitted of telling these people something that I know. How about the omission of evangelizing?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So there could be an omission of I ought to, and then we think about the workplace or something, or like when someone says the same thing, like in at school, right? Or a kid asks you, do you believe it? So I ought to say something, but I don't. Or even I see an injustice happening and I ought to say something, but I don't. Yeah. So yeah, that's like the same concept
And that was
when it comes.
just because
But yeah.
because like everybody all the time is the gospel and there's so many people and like how do you reach them all,
Yeah. So it's not like
But I think like if you feel like the Lord's putting it on your heart, then I would consider that to be like you're like omitting doing it.
Yeah.
And like I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
there's a
that's
conviction
another
aspect.
gray area because it is just really hard.
What's a conviction
And that's like that can get into like works too, like you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, no,
It can be stressful.
that's why it says like it's a sin for him. I think
Yeah.
I think it's a conviction aspect.
No, yeah.
So cool. Well, guys, that's all we have for this time. We want to keep a good time. Does the end of James 4 make sense? So I think a big part to remember is that maybe for this week, what we can think about too is it's not just make sure I don't lie, right? But it's I'm actually called to encourage others, right? I know I should be encouraging people. I know I should be blessing people. I know I should be helping people, right? So yeah, I didn't punch anybody in the face this week, but I also didn't help anybody this week, right? So think about the fact that God doesn't just call us to be like morally neutral, right? God doesn't just say don't do bad things. He also wants us to go forward in our faith and to do good things, right? He wants us to push forward and he wants our faith to have works. Wow, James 2, right? Whoa, the whole letter makes sense. Cool. So I was thinking what we could do is very quickly, do you guys want to do a bonus question? Like bonus fun question? Okay. What? Okay, so we can dismiss you guys. You can get, so basically Bible study, the Bible study part's over. Now we'll do a fun bonus theological question. And those for people that are new, what we do usually is we will either think of like an apologetic question, which is like defending Christianity. So what was our last apologetic question?
Yes,
Yeah.
like, is it okay?
Oh, yeah. So our last apologetic question was, how can we believe in a good God when he ordered like the massacres of a lot of people in the Old Testament, right? So stuff like that. And so we talked about that. I think before we even talked about like, if Christianity is true, why are there so many denominations? I think that was our first question, right? So this week we have a theology question, and we'll do it quickly, and then we'll play a game after. So, but if anyone wants to, let's just take a quick minute. Anyone wants to get snacks or drinks, and then whoever wants to stick around, we will talk about a cool theological question picked out by Riley Oxford herself.
Wait, is that your name?
Huh?
Riley Oxford?
Yeah.
Are you like related to the guy who Oxford College?
Oxford College.
I mean, you should have applied it. I feel like that's just like, you just get it.
It's a big last name.
What do you mean?
Don't say my name. Oh, what's up, Paul? Oh, one second.
I thought that was really
Oh, no. Yeah. What?
Wait, did you just didn't make that.
Yeah. So that idea. So like that James passage talks about it, but that idea comes from the Old Testament, where he talks about like the sin of the high hand, and it's a deeper concept. It's just how Christians like those words like aren't in the Bible. So but that's how we categorize them. And so, but like in the Old Testament, like the sin of the high hand was like doing sin, like knowing sin, and then but the sin like of not the high hand, like the hand that you don't see, that's the omitted part.
Did you pick Oxford?
Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah.
so Oxford is my grand.
But basically, anytime God says like love someone or do this, if you don't do that, that's omission. But anytime he says do not do something and you do it, that's commission. Yeah.
It's a little confusing.
Oh, here, I'll mute this. Any questions in the comments?
I'm sorry, watch.
No, there's 0 people.
Do you like to chat?
Yeah.
Welcome. Dun 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 dun. Hey, listen up, guys. It's time for the question. We gotta be quick. Do you want to play a game?
Yes.
Okay, then we have to be quick.
Okay.
Okay. You don't want to play a game?
No. What?
All right. Okay. She's gonna. Oh.
What, me?
No.
Oh,
She
Oh.
goes, you know what? I need to calm down.
You're right. I'm an adult.
I'm an adult, and I don't get mad over things quickly. There's like affirmation.
I am calm. I am.
It's like when you go to sleep. What's that thing we do? Rinsley's doing like hypnobirthing now. So we're falling asleep, and this lady's like, "You were made to give birth." And Rinsley's like falling asleep, and the camera pans over to me, and I'm on set of. Yeah, you have everything you need
But if you have
Voice in the dark.
to fall asleep.
yeah.
Like,
I was like, we wake up and I go, Rinsley, I have a weird idea. Okay. All right, here's the question, guys.
What? I did that too, really. Oh, that's good. Riley.
Are you okay?
No, I was laughing so hard.
Okay. Here's
He listened to like, I can give.
no, I'm not gonna give birth.
all right, scenario time, guys. All right, so what would you say to this? Group studies Luke 14. So you may want to get your Bible passages out, where Jesus says, "Whoever does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." Someone asks you, doesn't this mean you have to give everything up to be saved? Response. So break up into groups. Yeah, you did pick that.
Luke 14.
All right, let's break up into groups of 3. What? Luke 14.
Okay.
I'm supposed to read that tomorrow morning.
Oh.
Wait, can you say the?
Yeah. So here's the scenario again, guys. So the group studies Luke 14, where Jesus says, "Whoever does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." Someone asks you, does this mean you have to give everything up to be saved? Do you not want to do this question anymore?
No, I
No, I'm
still
doing
doing the question.
Oh, yeah. No, that's okay. I was talking about her. You're good.
Cole won't come after you. That's the third Bible study.
Why do people think I come after people?
You shouldn't be disabled. Are we going into
Bye.
Hello, viewer. We're discussing a theology question, and then we're going to get together and talk about it. So we're all in groups right now. The question we're going over is the group studies Luke 14, where Jesus says, "Whoever does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." And someone asks, "Doesn't this mean you have to give everything up to be saved?" So that's what we're going over. Goodbye. All right, guys.
Anybody know what that book?
All right, guys. Well, what are we thinking? I heard some people talking about once saved, always saved over here.
Yeah.
I'll second Trinity on that.
Well, for us, we were talking about like what is being a disciple and being saved like different. Because you said you need to do that to be saved, but he says you need to carry out your cross to be a disciple. So, but you can being a disciple is like actively like trying to like follow and learn from Jesus. It's like being like entered to him, and just being saved is just believing. And then he said like, well, if you like believe in Christ, aren't you gonna learn from him? And I was like, well, since we believe in once they're always saved, what about people who believed at one point and then like completely turn the other way? They can still be saved, but also not be actively like following Christ and everything. So that was just our point that it's not necessarily about being saved, it's about being a disciple.
Mm-hmm. What did you have something to say to that?
You just
Wait,
find
hold on. Did you have your hand up? Did you want to say something?
She kind of said something similar to what I was gonna say, like when the person is saying the question, they're saying, does that mean I need to give up everything to be saved? Which is it's like, it's not saying you need, if you don't give up everything, you're not saved. It's saying if you don't give up everything, then you're not a disciple. Disciple is to be a follower. So if you're following what the God is saying, then you're giving up your own fleshly desires, which is giving up everything. It's not saying give up everything and die. It's saying just give up everything, right?
Why did they pick up your cross?
What does that mean?
It's denying your flesh, right?
Is it?
Why?
Who said that? You said why?
Yeah, why? How do you make that connection?
The question.
Then-
What is it up the cross? What does that mean?
What is the cross? What is a cross?
thing you die on.
It's a thing you die on. Okay. So what?
So, I think it's to die to yourself. Said though.
Deny your flesh.
But you use different words.
It's to take up your cross, crucify your desires, and say,
And
I
yeah,
want this in order to eat it.
and that's what you meant. That's
That's
what
what
you
you
meant.
meant, yeah.
Yeah.
But what did I say though?
Deny your flesh.
Deny your flesh.
You said the same thing, but I was asking how you make the connection. And you made the connection.
Basically.
Well, okay.
Well, because Paul says to live as Christ, to die as gain. And so you say, how is to live as Christ? It's because you crucified
So,
your
and
flesh.
thinking about discipleship, then. So, discipleship, is it easy or hard?
Hard.
Hard. How much of your flesh do you need to crucify?
All of
All of it.
Every single part.
every part of it.
So, every sinful desire.
Yeah.
Every single one.
I feel like not all
Doesn't mean
disciples
we're
are bad.
No, every sinful desire.
Oh, I just heard desires.
Okay.
Every single one.
Every single one.
To be a perfect disciple, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we're not perfect. Like we're
Yeah.
not.
No, we're not. We're not.
But we can try our darndest. No, I agree.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, but to be the disciple Jesus wants us to be, he wants us to what? Does he want us to deny or do our best to deny all our sinful desires? Not half?
All of them.
Not like all except one? Oh, okay. No, I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
I'm just
Why are you assuming, or it seems that you're assuming, and I'm wondering why, that Jesus is using hyperbole where he's talking about like our sinful desires? Why aren't you assuming Jesus is saying you can't be my disciple unless you're a martyr?
Unless you're a martyr.
Yeah, that to me is the literal interpretation.
I think
assumes he's using hyperbole because that's a really extreme play.
well, I think it's obvious that it's hyperbole, but then also
But why?
the most literal reading would be the fact that there would be crosses in front of everyone, and he's actually telling them to pick them up, but that's not in the passage. So like that would be like a hyper literal reading.
But doesn't everybody technically have a chance to either die for something that they care about? Like if you really wanted to die for something that you believe is like completely right, you could. So his thing works.
No. I know, I get it. I'm saying, yeah, you could, but what I'm saying is the passage it could lead to martyrdom, like what Isaac said. It definitely could lead to martyrdom, but but I think what he's obviously pushing at is that you need to die to yourself, because he says pick up your cross and then he says follow me, right? So that's where he's going.
Also,
How does that not be a martyr for my cause?
Well, I'm saying it can be, right?
Also, in the passage, Jesus isn't actually carrying his own cross, so it's not like he's like, all right, every cross is with me, and we're gonna go.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that
If
too.
it was that, then great, but that's not happening. So I think it definitely can be like you were saying, both denying your flesh, crucifying your old self, and also sometimes more than that. I mean, especially think in Bible times, in New Testament times, all of the apostles except John were martyred. And a lot of other Christians were martyred by Paul, even. And you think in places like overseas, China, Russia, people are killed every day for their faith. I don't have numbers for that.
And again, the rest of the passage, right? So just look around everything that Jesus is saying. He says you have to hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and yes, even his own life, right? You have to pick up the cross. You have to, before you intend to build a tower, you have to sit first and count the cost, right? So what he's saying is you need to be all in. That's what he's saying, right? So look at all these things. You need to put me above your family, put me above yourself. You need to sit down and think about this because it's going to be a big process. You need to pick up your cross, right?
I don't think
Sorry.
we should want to go die, but what he's saying is have the willingness to go die for Christ.
Yeah, because also again, like if you take it hyper literally, I'm going to pick up my cross, but I'm also going to build a tower at the same time. You know what I mean? So, what?
You can do both.
I don't know what you're talking about.
How can Christians know that they have the strength, or how can Christians know they would be willing to die for their faith if they're never put in that circumstance or can't?
Well, I think it's just a mind. I think it's just a willingness of.
Like, I think it sounds like all nice and pretty.
No, it does, but then push comes to shove.
To your head or someone's the Christian's head.
That's what Peter did, right? Peter was like, "I'll never deny you."
Yeah.
Then he did it 3 times, right? So it goes to show where we're really at, right?
I would say that sometimes, like for some people, like it's
I don't know
even
if I agree
hard-
with that.
It's even harder to like deny your family or a friend or something else rather than if somebody were to put a gun to your head. You know, depending on the person, some would be totally willing to just die, but maybe not willing to, send that to family or loved ones. And so I think we actually are, a lot of us are given opportunities to show that we put God above everything in our lives.
Didn't Mother Teresa use this to like hurt themselves? I mean,
To what?
Maybe.
to like make their nuns hurt themselves?
I have no idea what Mother Teresa
Yeah, I
did.
think that's not example of like taking it the bad way.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, well, Catholics have, a lot of times, like, older Catholics too, like, hey, if you climb up these stairs on your knees and bleed, like, you get less time in purgatory. So, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, no, that's good. Okay, guys, well, this has been the Bible study. Good answers. Do we like the answer of discipleship is costly, salvation's free, right? And there's a distinction there. Cool. All right. Well, bye, Ines.
Kindness.
Even though she didn't watch that one last time. Even that she